My name is Evelyn Carter, and I am 60 years old. What I am about to tell you will forever alter the way you look at your own family. Just 3 days ago, my own son, Lucas, and his wife, Sophie, shoved my husband, Thomas, and me off a cliff nearly 90 feet high. As I lay there shattered and covered in blood, I heard my husband's trembling voice whisper, "Evelyn, don't move. Pretend you're dead." But that wasn't the worst part. The real horror came when Thomas revealed a truth that no mother should ever hear, a secret our children had hidden for 25 years. For 4 decades, Thomas and I believed we had built the perfect family. Every morning in our little suburban home in Cedar Ridge, we awoke to the scent of fresh coffee mixing with the morning bird song. I worked as a teacher at the local elementary school, and each afternoon I'd return home filled with stories about my lively students. Thomas ran his carpentry shop, crafting the most exquisite furniture you could imagine. His hands, rough yet gentle, could turn a plain plank of wood into something worthy of admiration. We had 2 sons, Andrew, our firstborn, and Lucas, 5 years younger. Andrew was the light of the house, always laughing, always lending a hand to his father, always protecting me from worry. Lucas was more withdrawn, quieter, yet I loved him no less. A mother never chooses favorites, or at least, that's what I once believed. On Sundays after church, the entire family gathered around the oak table Thomas had carved himself. Andrew would excitedly talk about studying engineering, while Lucas picked at his meal in silence. Life was simple, but it was beautiful. In the evenings, Thomas and I would stroll the trail that circled our town. Speaking of dreams, how we'd watch our grandchildren grow, and how we'd grow old together in that same house. Never in my wildest thoughts did I imagine those gentle walks would one day prepare me for the one that almost ended my life. On weekends, I hosted family gatherings. My sisters, Martha and Lydia, arrived with their husbands and children, filling the house with laughter. The air smelled of home-cooked food. The sound of children's footsteps echoed through the hallways, and the men would repair something in the yard while the women traded recipes in the kitchen. Through it all, Thomas was my perfect partner. Even after 40 years of marriage, he still brought me wildflowers. He picked on his way to work. He helped grade my students' papers, and I'd hold the wooden planks for him while he sawed them in his workshop. We were a team, or so. I thought, a bond nothing could break. At night, we'd sit together on the porch, gazing at the stars and talking about our plans for the future. We dreamed of traveling after retirement, of seeing the ocean for the first time, of building a smaller home once our children had their own families. But as I would learn years later, perfect happiness often hides the deepest cracks. When Andrew turned 20, something began to shift within our household. He and Lucas started quarreling about matters I didn't understand. I often overheard them whispering in the hallway, only for their voices to fall silent the moment I appeared. Thomas assured me it was nothing but brotherly tension that would soon fade. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe that our family was still flawless. Then, one October night, exactly 25 years ago, Andrew didn't come home for dinner. We waited until 11, then 12, then 1 in the morning. Lucas claimed to be studying in his room, but there was a strange look in his eyes whenever I asked about his brother. Thomas went out searching with the neighbors, checking every street corner, every wooded trail, every place Andrew loved to visit. At dawn, they found his body at the bottom of Blackstone Gorge. The police said it had been an accident, that he must have slipped in the dark. I accepted their version, unable to imagine the darker reality hiding beneath. Andrew's funeral was the darkest day of my life. I wore the same black dress I'd worn at my mother's burial. Lucas, to my surprise, remained unusually calm for someone who had just lost his brother. While I wept until my body shook, he sat silently, wearing an expression that now knowing what I know makes my blood run cold. Thomas stayed by my side, holding me whenever I faltered, whispering words of comfort that I now realize must have burned his tongue. After Andrew's death, Lucas transformed completely. He became more affectionate, more helpful, as if making up for something unseen. He helped with chores, joined his father in the workshop, and brought me little gifts when I was down. I believed it was his way of coping with grief, of filling the void his brother had left. How naive I was. In truth, he was constructing a flawless mask to conceal the darkness within. Years passed. The pain dulled but never healed. Lucas eventually married Sophie, a charming young woman from a nearby town. They had 2 beautiful children, and for a while I felt as though life had offered us another chance at happiness. Sophie called me Mom, helping me around the house whenever they visited. Lucas had inherited Thomas's craftsmanship and opened his own carpentry business. Everything seemed right again. But now, lying broken at the bottom of this ravine, tasting blood and breathing through fractured ribs, I understand that all that joy was a carefully built illusion. The first cracks appeared 6 months ago. When Thomas and I decided to update our will, we had saved throughout our lives. And between our house, the land I inherited from my parents, and our savings account, we had nearly $200,000 to leave our children and grandchildren. It was Lucas who suggested visiting the lawyer. Mom, Dad, you're both 60 now, he said with a smile that I now see as sinister. Sophie sat beside him, stroking my hand with the very fingers that would later push me to my death. We love you both and just want to make sure you're protected, she added sweetly. I was foolish enough to take those words as love. Our lawyer, Samuel Whitaker, an old family acquaintance, explained our options. We could create a trust, divide the assets among Lucas's children, or keep a traditional will. Lucas urged that he and Sophie be named as sole heirs, promising to handle distribution to the grandchildren fairly. Besides, he said, you'll need us when you're older. It's better if we manage things directly so we can take care of you properly. Something in his tone unsettled me. But Thomas, always more trusting, agreed without protest. He hesitated, recalling how Andrew once spoke of taking care of us when we aged. Our eldest son had dreamed of it, but he was gone. And Lucas was our only surviving child. So we signed the papers on a Tuesday afternoon. I still remember Sophie in a soft green dress, hugging me tightly after the signing. Now we're officially one family forever, she whispered. Her words sent a shiver down my spine, though I couldn't explain why. That evening, while I cooked dinner, a sense of dread gnawed at me as if I had just made an irreversible mistake. The following weeks felt different. Lucas and Sophie began visiting us frequently, but not for the same reasons as before. Their conversations always revolved around money, investments, home improvements, or insurance. Mom, Sophie said one afternoon, her gaze sweeping over our furniture, you should consider selling this big house and finding something smaller. We could help you find a lovely apartment downtown. But I adored our house. Every corner held a piece of our lives, the kitchen where I'd prepared thousands of meals, the workshop where Thomas built his masterpieces, the yard where our children and grandchildren once played. I couldn't imagine leaving. When I told them this, irritation flashed across Lucas's face. Mom, you're being unreasonable, he said sharply, a tone he had never used with me before. This house is too large for 2 people, your age. If you fall down the stairs or something happens, we won't be there in time. Sophie nodded eagerly. And maintaining it must be so expensive. It's smarter to sell now, while the market's strong, and move somewhere suited to your age. Thomas began to see the logic in their arguments, but I couldn't shake the feeling that their concern wasn't love. It was calculation. One night, after another strained visit, I asked Thomas if he didn't find it odd that Lucas had suddenly become so involved in our finances. "Evelyn, he just cares about us," he said as he brushed his teeth. "Maybe we should consider it. We're not as young as we used to be." But I caught a shadow in his eyes, doubt he refused to voice. Only now do I realize he had already started connecting dots I hadn't yet seen. Things worsened when Lucas suggested we grant him power of attorney. "It's just for precaution," he said smoothly while Sophie brewed tea in our kitchen as if it belonged to her. "If one of you gets sick, we could manage everything without legal headaches." His reasoning sounded practical, almost convincing. Yet his insistence gnawed at me. That night I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, listening to Thomas breathe beside me, wondering why fear had taken hold of me so completely. The next morning, I called my sister, Martha, for advice. She had always been more skeptical than I was. After I told her about Lucas's pressure, she stayed quiet for several seconds before saying, "Evelyn, don't you find it odd how desperate Lucas is to control your finances? He's got his own business." "Right. Why would he need your money?" Her words struck me like cold water. She was right. Lucas had never seemed short on cash, never asked for loans, never hinted at financial trouble. That afternoon, when Lucas came by to talk about our future again, I confronted him. "Son," I began as we sat in the living room, "why is it so important for you to manage our financial matters? Your father and I are perfectly capable of handling them." His reaction was instant, his expression hardened, and for a fleeting moment, I saw something familiar, a cold, calculating glint that reminded me of someone I had lost. "Mom, this isn't about control," he said in a strained tone. "It's about love, courage, and family responsibility." Yet the way he said family responsibility sounded more like a veiled threat than affection. Sophie, who had been silent until then, spoke up softly but firmly. "Evelyn, we only want what's best for you. It hurts to see you worry about things we could easily take care of." That night, after they left, Thomas and I had our first real argument in years. He accused me of paranoia, of seeing ghosts where there were none. I told him something wasn't right, that Lucas no longer felt like the son we once knew. "Thomas," I said as we washed dishes, "do you remember what Lucas was like before Andrew died?" He was distant, cold. There was something about him that frightened me. Thomas froze, the plate still in his hand. In his eyes, I saw something new, recognition. "Evelyn," he whispered, "there are things about Andrew's death I never told you." My heart thundered. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice trembling. Thomas sank into one of the kitchen chairs, the same table where Andrew once did his homework, and Lucas sat in silence. He rubbed his face with both hands as if trying to erase 25 years of guilt. "The night Andrew died," he began in a broken voice, "Lucas wasn't in his room studying like he said. I saw him leave the house around 8. I followed because something about him worried me. He'd been tense, angry, resentful." He paused, staring at his hands as though the truth were carved into them. "I saw them near the gorge arguing. I heard them shouting terrible things." The world began to tilt around me. "What were they fighting about?" I whispered, though part of me didn't want to know. Thomas looked up, tears in his eyes, tears he hadn't shed even at Andrew's funeral. "The inheritance," he said finally. Lucas was furious that Andrew, as the eldest, would inherit most of what we owned. But there was something else, something about money Andrew had found. "What money?" I demanded, my voice shaking. Thomas exhaled heavily. 3 days before he died, Andrew came to me in the workshop. He had discovered that Lucas had been stealing from our savings account. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. Andrew had proof he'd been investigating for months. I could barely breathe. My youngest son, the one who had comforted me after his brother's death, who pretended to care, had been stealing from us long before that night. Why didn't you tell me? I cried, the betrayal slicing through me like a blade. Because when I reached the gorge, it was already too late. Thomas said, his voice breaking. I saw Lucas standing beside Andrew's body, trembling, crying, repeating that it was an accident. He looked at me with desperate eyes and begged for help. Dad, he said. Andrew fell while trying to hit me. I just defended myself. And he lost his balance. Tears blurred my vision. But you believed him, I murmured. Though I already knew the answer, Thomas nodded slowly. Guilt etched across his face. He was my son. Evelyn, my youngest. Andrew was gone. I couldn't bring one back by destroying the other. I convinced myself it was an accident, that Lucas had learned his lesson and would become a better man. And the stolen money, I asked, choking back tears. Lucas promised to repay it little by little. Said he had taken it for a failed business investment. He swore he'd never do anything like that again. And I believed him. Evelyn, God forgive me, but I believed him because I couldn't bear to think my son was a killer. I stumbled to my feet, clutching the wall for balance. Everything I had believed about my family, my surviving son, the last 25 years, all of it had been a lie. Did he ever pay it back? I asked, already knowing. Never, Thomas whispered. He kept taking small amounts, and I kept pretending not to notice because to confront him meant admitting I had helped hide a murder. I became his accomplice. Each time I stayed silent, each time I ignored the dwindling bank statements, I became more complicit. And then the truth struck me with full force. That's why he's so obsessed with our finances. I muttered. It's not care. He wants to finish what he started 25 years ago. Thomas nodded gravely. And there's more. Evelyn, something I found only weeks ago. My heart clenched. What else could there possibly be? Thomas went to his desk and returned with papers. I've been quietly checking into Lucas's business. His carpentry shop isn't doing well. He's nearly bankrupt, owes more than $100,000 to banks and suppliers. My hands shook as I read the figures. Lucas wasn't the successful man he claimed to be. He was a desperate failure, built entirely on lies and stolen money. Does Sophie know? I asked, remembering her affectionate smiles. I'm certain she does. Thomas said, I've seen how she leads every conversation about our finances, asking specific questions about our savings, our property, our life insurance. Those aren't innocent inquiries. Evelyn, their calculations. She's measuring exactly how much our deaths are worth. That line froze the blood in my veins. Our deaths, I whispered, repeating it to myself. It was the first moment I truly considered that Lucas might intend real physical harm. Until then, I had believed he only wanted to swindle or deceive us. But if he had ended his own brother's life over money, what would keep him from doing the same to his parents, Thomas? I said, clutching his hands. We have to go to the police. We must tell them the truth about Andrew and about what is happening now. But my husband shook his head with a hopeless look that shattered me. With what proof? Evelyn, I helped conceal a killing. If I speak now, I will end up in prison as well. And besides, he added, who will believe an old man of 65 who has hidden this for 25 years? He was not wrong. So we just wait for him to do to us what he did to Andrew. We will be extremely careful, Thomas said, trying to sound braver than he felt. We will find a way to shield ourselves, to gather evidence. His sentence was cut off by the ring of the phone. It was Lucas. Hi. Mom, he said, using that honeyed tone that now sounded like poison. Sophie and I were thinking it would be wonderful to celebrate your 40th anniversary with something special. How about we take you to those mountains you've always mentioned next weekend? A family hike. Some photos. A perfect day together. I turned to ice. I looked at Thomas, who had heard every word and wore the same terror on his face. That's very thoughtful. Son, I managed, voice shaking. Let us think about it. And we'll call you tomorrow. When the call ended, Thomas and I stared at each other, understanding we had just received an invitation to our own execution. The mountains? I murmured. He will take us there to kill us and make it look accidental. Thomas nodded gravely. Just as he had on the night at the gorge with Andrew, we did not sleep a single minute that night. We clung to each other in bed, mapping out how we might escape our own son. The days that followed were a performance of terror. We had to act as if nothing were wrong whenever Lucas and Sophie visited, smiling when they mentioned the trip, nodding as they gushed about family time. Inside, every fiber of me screamed. I was looking into the eyes of my elder son's killers, and now they were planning to repeat it with me and my husband. Sophie arrived on Wednesday afternoon with a shopping bag and that radiant smile that now looked like a demon's grimace. "Evelyn, dear," she said, hugging me with arms that would soon try to shove me to my death. I picked up supplies for our Mountain Day cookies, water, fright, everything for the picnic. She showed off the contents like an excited child. While all I could think was how each item could help mask our murder, I also brought my new camera. She added, producing an expensive digital model. I want to capture every moment of this special day. These will be photos we'll treasure forever. The irony made me nauseous. The only image she intended to keep was our broken bodies at the bottom of a cliff, if anyone ever found us. Lucas appeared behind her with a new hiking pack. "Dad," he told Thomas with fake enthusiasm, "I bought all the gear we'll need for a safe hike: ropes, harnesses, headlamps, a first aid kit." Every word sounded like a cruel joke. Safety gear to facilitate our murders. The perversity made me dizzy. "Isn't this a little risky for people our age?" I asked, aiming for casual while searching for any excuse to cancel. Sophie stroked my cheek with counterfeit tenderness that turned my stomach. "That's why we picked a very easy, very safe trail," she promised. "It's something even kids can do. And Lucas and I will be right there, taking care of you both the entire time." Yes, they would care for us, right up to the moment they decided to push us over an edge. That night, after they finally left, Thomas and I sat trembling in the living room, not from cold, but from the terror we had been swallowing for hours. "We cannot go," I said, gripping his hands. "We just cannot. We will make up an excuse. If we refuse," Thomas answered in a solemn voice, "they will find another way to kill us, something that looks even more accidental, like a house fire or a staged burglary, at least in the mountains. We know what they intend to attempt." His logic was terrible and utterly uncomforting. "Then what do you propose?" I pleaded, desperate for a way to live. After several minutes of thought, Thomas said, "We will go, but we will be ready. I will hide my phone and set it to record everything. If we survive, we will have evidence. And if we do not," his voice broke, "at least someone will learn the truth." On Friday night, we could barely touch our dinner. We knew it might be our last meal in that kitchen, where we had shared so many happy moments when we believed our family was whole. Thomas reviewed his will once more, ensuring that if the worst happened, Lucas would not simply receive everything without a trace of our suspicions. I wrote a letter. He confessed, taking a sealed envelope from his desk. "It is addressed to Martha." I explain everything we know about Andrew's death and what we believe Lucas intends for us. I have hidden it with our important papers. If we do not return, She will know where to begin. That night, we lay in each other's arms, whispering words of love that could have been our last. If something happens to me, Thomas said, I know that these 40 years with you have been the best of my life. Despite the mistakes and the secrecy, I love you more than my own life. I cried quietly, memorizing his breathing, his warmth, his scent. Saturday broke under a clear sky that mocked us. Lucas arrived early, whistling a cheerful tune that chilled my blood. Morning, lovebirds, he called from the door. Ready for your big adventure. Sophie stood behind him, glowing like a bride. Only this was a wedding with death. Over a breakfast we could not eat. Lucas detailed the route. It's a beautiful trail, he said, spreading a map across the table. It leads to an overlook where you can see the valley. People say the view is spectacular. His eyes gleamed with a demonic thrill. Of course, the view would be spectacular. It would be the last thing we ever saw. There are a few steep sections, Sophie added, as if sharing helpful travel tips. But nothing that experienced hikers like you cannot handle. The joke was cruel. We were two 60-year-olds who rarely did more than stroll the park. While we loaded the car, I watched Lucas check his pack with meticulous care, confirming he had everything he needed for his scheme. Isauropes, a small shovel, and something that resembled a flare gun. What is that for? I asked, pointing. For safety, he answered smoothly. If we get lost or anything goes wrong, we can signal for help. Of course, they would signal after pushing us so our bodies could be found, and our deaths declared a tragic hiking mishap. Everything was calculated. Every detail had been arranged to make our murders look natural. The drive to the mountains took 2 hours that stretched into eternity. Sophie put on upbeat music and sang along as if we were headed for a happy family outing. Lucas drove with perfect caution, observing every speed limit, stopping at every sign. He would not risk a random accident, spoiling his perfect plan. During the ride, Thomas squeezed my hand and quietly started the recorder on his phone. From that instant, everything would be captured. If we endured it, we would have proof. If we did not, the truth would not die with us. When we reached the trailhead, my heart pounded so violently, I thought it might burst. The place was beautiful. Tall trees, the rush of a nearby river, but to me it had become the stage for my execution. Lucas and Sophie hoisted their packs with easy smiles and light banter, as if this were the happiest day of their lives. Ready for adventure? Lucas asked. And for the first time in 25 years, I recognized the same glacial gleam in his eyes that I had seen the night Andrew died. The path began gently, twisting through lush trees and rocks cushioned with moss. Sophie walked ahead, constantly snapping photos and gushing about the scenery. Look at those wildflowers, she exclaimed, pointing at thick branches of yellow blossoms. And that beautiful bird. Her performance was flawless, the devoted daughter-in-law relishing a special day with her in-laws. Lucas lagged behind us, supposedly to make sure we did not fall behind. Yet I felt his stare on our backs like a set of knives. Whenever I turned, he flashed that rehearsed smile he had polished over 25 years of deceit. How are you doing? Mom and Dad, he would ask with counterfeit concern. Need to rest after about an hour. The trail grew steeper. My legs were heavy, and Thomas was breathing hard. We were not used to this kind of strain, and our murderous children knew it. They had chosen a route that would sap our strength so we would be easy to finish when the time came. We're almost at the overlook, Sophie announced. But the map I had studied at home showed at least another hour to the real viewpoint. And her lie confirmed they never intended to reach it. The spot where they planned to kill us had to be much closer. As we climbed, I tried to memorize every bend, every distinctive rock, every tree. Anything I could later use to tell the police exactly where it happened. Should I live long enough to tell it? Thomas did the same, now and then. Our eyes met, full of terror and resolve. We knew we were walking toward death. But it was the only way to capture proof against our killers. Oh, look at that, Sophie suddenly cried, pointing to a jutting rock formation on our right. That cliff has an incredible view. Why don't we climb up for some special photos? My blood turned cold. There it was, the place chosen for our murder. The cliff rose nearly 90 feet above the main trail, reachable by a narrow spur far more treacherous than the path we had followed. The stones were loose. There were fewer trees to grab if someone slipped. From the top, the drop plunged into a deep ravine scattered with jagged rock. I am not sure that's wise, I said, trying to sound offhand. That sidetrack looks dangerous for people our age, but Lucas had already headed toward the turnoff. Carrying his pack filled with safety gear, I knew he would not deploy to save us. Come on, Mom, he coaxed in the same tone he used as a boy when he wanted something. It'll only take a few minutes. And Sophie is right. The photos up there will be spectacular. The way he said spectacular made me shiver. Spectacular for whoever later viewed them as proof of our accident. Thomas squeezed my hand, reminding me that his phone was recording. We had to keep going. We had to see this through to gather what we needed. If we refused, they would simply choose another moment. Another excuse. Another ledge. The ascent to the cliff drained us. The loose stones skittered beneath our feet, and I nearly fell more than once. The most terrifying realization was how perfectly suited this place was for a killing. A single misstep from the top would be unsurvivable, and, most importantly, there would be no witnesses. Almost there. Sophie called from above, reaching the top with the agility of someone who had studied the route carefully. Lucas followed, then offered Thomas and me a hand up the last few feet. His grip on my arms felt like a vulture's claws. The overlook truly was magnificent. The valley spread below. Mountains lined the horizon, and a river wound through the trees. In any other world, it would have been a moment to savor with family. But with what I knew, it was the perfect set for a nightmare. Come over here for the photos, Sophie called, positioning herself near the edge. I want the valley behind you. Thomas and I shuffled forward, each step carrying us closer to our end. I watched Lucas place himself behind us with precision, calculating angles, measuring distance. Perfect, Sophie said, lifting her camera. Now, hold each other and smile. We embraced most likely for the last time as she clicked frame after frame. Each flash felt like lightning announcing the coming storm. Take one more, Lucas suggested, moving closer. But step back a little so the landscape opens up. One small step back placed us right at the edge of the void. Thomas and I exchanged a look. The moment had arrived. We obeyed, sensing the ground vanish under our heels and the emptiness yawning behind us. Sophie raised the camera again, and this time I saw it no need to pretend any longer. Herr Maske slipped. Smile, she said, her voice stripped of sweetness. This will be your last picture. At that instant, Lucas lunged, arms outstretched. The plan was simple: shove us backward into the abyss, take photographs of the accident, then scramble down to discover our shattered bodies. But Thomas had prepared. In the final heartbeat, he seized Lucas by the wrist and yanked him forward. If we die, you're coming with us, he roared with a fury I had never witnessed in him. For one horrifying moment, the four of us teetered together on the rim, clinging and pushing in a macabre dance between life and death. Sophie screamed and tried to pull Lucas back, but the combined weight was too much. I felt the ground crumble beneath me, felt gravity take hold. Then all four of us went over locked in a lethal embrace, screaming as the wind howled past and the rock rushed up like a wall. In those seconds that felt like an eternity, I thought of Andrew, how he must have felt when Lucas sent him into the gorge 25 years earlier. The impact was savage. I heard the crack of bones, felt my own body break against the stones. The pain defies description. Worse still was the metallic taste flooding my mouth, and the certainty that this time Lucas had won. This time, there would be no witnesses to speak the truth. Then I heard Thomas's voice, weak but clear. "Evelyn, do not move. Play dead." And I realized the astonishing thing: I was still alive. The pain was so immense I thought my mind would shatter. Every nerve screamed. Blood trickled down my face. Something warm and sticky soaked my clothes. But Thomas's words echoed like a commandment: play dead, summoning a will I didn't know I possessed. I went utterly still, even slowing my breath until it was nearly invisible. A few feet away, I heard Lucas and Sophie groaning. They had survived the fall too, though their moans suggested they were worse off than we were. "Sophie," my son rasped, "are you okay?" His concern for his wife made my stomach twist. This man, who had killed his brother and just tried to kill us, still had room for love. I think I broke my leg. Sophie moaned. "It hurts so much." Lucas, what about the old folks? The contempt in how she named us confirmed what I had always feared. We had never been family to her, only obstacles between her and our money. I heard Lucas begin to crawl. My heart hammered so loudly I feared he would hear it. "They're dead," he announced after several minutes that felt like hours. Both of them eyes open. "No breath." His lie filled me with a strange, fragile hope. If he believed we were gone, we might have a chance. "Perfect," Sophie whispered with chilling satisfaction. It worked exactly as planned, except for the part where we fell. 2. I heard her bitter laugh. "At least we do not have to pretend to love them anymore." For the next few minutes, an eternity, Lucas and Sophie talked through their situation. Both were injured, but they were still able to move. Under their new plan, they would crawl until they found a spot with reception, call for help, and then spin a tale about how they had miraculously survived a tragic mishap that had killed their poor in-laws. "Stick to the script," Lucas told Sophie. "We were taking pictures when a rock slipped under Dad's foot. He stumbled, and while trying to steady himself, he pulled Mom with him. We tried to help, and we went over. 2. It's crucial our versions match." "I know," Sophie answered. "We've rehearsed this 100 times. We're the traumatized survivors of a family catastrophe. Poor us, we lost our beloved in-laws in a horrible accident." Her performance was so persuasive that, had I not lived the truth, I might have believed every word. Little by little, their voices faded as they crawled toward what they imagined would save them. When silence finally settled, Thomas breathed my name so softly I barely heard him. "Evelyn, are you all right?" I replied in the same whisper, confirming I was alive though grievously hurt. "My left leg is broken," he said through clenched teeth, "and I think a few ribs are fractured. What about you?" I took quick stock of my body. A stabbing pain ran through my right arm. My head pounded as if struck by a hammer. My shoulder was wrong in a way I could feel but not name. Still, I was alive, which was more than I had dared hope. "We're in terrible shape, but we're alive," I breathed. "The phone's recording works, but there's no signal down here." That was the most terrifying part. We were alive, yet trapped at the bottom of a gorge, injured, and utterly cut off. If no one came, we would die slowly of thirst, hunger, or our wounds. "Thomas," I whispered, "before it's too late. I need everything, the whole truth about the night Andrew died. He exhaled as if he had been holding that breath for 25 years. That night, he began, voice shaking. Andrew came to my workshop furious. He had papers, bank statements. He showed me proof that Lucas had been taking money from our accounts for months. Small amounts at first, then larger. Andrew had noticed discrepancies and had been investigating. The ache in my body fused with an older, deeper hurt as decades of secrecy cracked open. Andrew wanted to confront Lucas that same night. Thomas continued. I tried to calm him, to wait until morning, but he wouldn't. He said he could not sleep, knowing his younger brother was stealing from us. And you followed him? I asked. Though I already knew, I did. He said. I feared what might happen. I knew Andrew's temper when angered. And I had noticed something else in Lucas, a coldness that chilled me. When I reached the gorge, Thomas said, they were screaming at each other. Andrew waved the papers in Lucas's face. You're a thief, he shouted. You're stealing from our own parents. Lucas denied it all, called Andrew crazy. Said he was making things up. My heart raced as I pictured my two sons in the dark, one accusing, the other deflecting. What happened next? I asked after a long pause. Andrew told him that if he didn't return the money and confess to us, he would tell us himself. Lucas snapped. He ranted that Andrew had always been the favorite, that life had always been easy for him, that it was time things changed. And then Thomas's voice broke. Lucas pushed Andrew. It wasn't an accident. He shoved him hard. On purpose. I saw Andrew windmill his arms, searching for anything to catch. But it was too late. Tears ran hot down my face, mixing with the blood from my cuts. Why didn't you ever tell me? Thomas drew a ragged breath. Because when I got to Lucas, he was sobbing and shaking, saying again and again it was an accident, that he hadn't meant it. He begged me not to tell you, that he couldn't lose you, too, but you knew he was lying. I whispered from the deepest part of me. Yes, he said, but he was my son. Evelyn, my only surviving son. How could I turn him in? How could I destroy what little remained of our family? His defense hurt as much as my injuries. And the stolen money I pressed. He promised to repay it bit by bit. Thomas said, claimed it was a bad decision, that he'd been desperate, that it would never happen again. But he never returned a penny. He kept taking. And I kept quiet each day, making me more complicit. Just then, distant voices drifted toward us. Lucas and Sophie had found help. Soon a rescue team would arrive, and our murderous children would perform the roles of their lives, the devastated survivors of a family tragedy. The voices grew louder, accompanied by the thrum of helicopters overhead. With rescue came the most crucial choice of our lives. We had minutes to decide: continue feigning death until we could reveal the truth safely, or risk being saved in full view of our would-be killers. Evelyn, Thomas whispered urgently. The phone captured everything up there. We have Sophie admitting the plan. We have Lucas calling us obstacles. We have it all. But if they find us alive now, they can destroy the evidence before we can hand it over. He was right. If Lucas and Sophie realized we had survived and overheard them, they would silence us this time, not by accident, but directly and permanently. We had to wait for the perfect moment. They're down here, Lucas shouted from above. My parents, please hurry. His performance was flawless. His voice cracked with grief. Had I not known the truth, I would have believed he was a son, crushed by loss. Sir, stay calm. An authoritative voice answered. Surely the rescue lead. We're coming down to assess you. Can you and your wife move? I heard ropes and metal clinking as the team prepared to descend. Sophie refined her part as the grieving daughter-in-law. I can't believe this happened. She sobbed. We were taking pictures so happy, and then it all happened so fast. A rock gave way, and they fell. Each word stabbed me because I knew she would repeat that lie to the police. The press. Anyone who would listen. The rescuers came closer, voices echoing off stone. Boots scraping rock. Jeer rattling. Thomas squeezed my hand, reminding me to keep up the act, no matter what. Over here, one rescuer called. We have two at the bottom. He knelt beside us. I kept my eyes shut, my breath so faint, it barely moved my chest. Fingers searched for a pulse at my neck. An ear hovered above my mouth, listening for air. This one has a faint pulse, he said of Thomas. The woman, I'm not sure. I need the medical team down here immediately. My heart raced. The plan was working. They would consider Thomas barely alive, and me at death's edge, no immediate threat to anyone. For several minutes that felt like hours, the medics worked over us. An oxygen mask sealed over my face, hands checked wounds, straps tightened around a stretcher. Every instinct screamed to open my eyes. Be for help. Stop pretending, but I did not move. The man is stable but critical. A paramedic reported over the radio. The woman is in very serious condition, pulse nearly imperceptible. We need to transport both immediately. Perfect. At the hospital? We might speak to authorities without Lucas and Sophie cutting us off. As they hoisted us up, I heard Sophie's delicate sobs and the comfort offered to both her and Lucas. You were so brave to survive this. Someone told her, it's a miracle, you're okay. If only they knew the real miracle that Thomas and I still breathed to tell the truth. In the medevac helicopter, I sensed Thomas on the stretcher beside mine. The paramedics focused on keeping him stable. From their clipped exchanges, I understood he was in critical shape. His injuries were worse than mine, and a terrible fear gripped me that he might die before we could expose everything. Ma'am, a paramedic said gently, if you can hear me, hold on. We'll reach the hospital in a few minutes. His kindness stood in stark contrast to the lies I had endured from my own family. Charles Meadows at St. Augustine Regional Hospital. Doctors and nurses rushed, calling orders I didn't understand. I was wheeled into an emergency bay, where a team began working on me. I had to keep feigning unconsciousness, yet I also needed to alert someone I could trust. Doctor, a nurse said. Her vitals are odd. Her pulse is stronger than we'd expect for someone in this supposed condition. My heart stuttered. Had they discovered me? Was my body betraying the act him? The doctor murmured. It happens in severe trauma. The body clings to life in mysterious ways. Keep close watch. The next few hours are critical. We've done everything we can. Sophie made a sound that could have passed for grief, but to me it was a sigh of relief. May we see them? Lucas asked. Just a few minutes, we need to say goodbye. Just in case. The doctor agreed. Footsteps neared my bed. This was the most dangerous moment of all. I had to convince my murderous son I was truly dying. I felt Lucas beside me. His hand touched mine, and it took all my strength not to snatch it away. Mom, he whispered. If you can hear me, I love you. I'm so sorry. Honeyed poison, sweet on the tongue, lethal at the core. Sophie came to the other side. Evelyn, dear, she murmured. You've been like a mother to me. We'll never forget you. Lear. They would remember me only because they had to live with what they had done. Then, Lucas leaned to my ear and breathed a sentence that iced my veins. I hope you learned your lesson. Mom, you should never have asked so many questions about our finances. Some truths are better buried like Andrew. In that instant, I knew our plan had worked. He had confessed. And although nothing was recording at my bedside, a nurse had heard everything. His whisper rang like a direct admission. He had named Andrew. He had said some truths should stay buried. Most of all, he had tied our accident to our questions about money. But I needed more, something unambiguous. Something no one could twist. The nurse who overheard her badge read Inez Alvarez, froze by the monitor. Eyes wide with shock. Through my half-closed lids, I saw that she understood exactly what those words meant. "What did you say about Andrew?" Sophie hissed. Startled by the name of the dead brother, Lucas stiffened, realizing he had said too much. "Nothing," he muttered. "I meant Mom always wondered what really happened. It doesn't matter now." But it did matter. And Sophie knew it. "Lucas," she said tightly. "Let's go. The doctors need room." Their tension told me they both recognized their mistake. After they left, Nurse Inez came to my bed. "Ma'am," she whispered, "I know you can hear me. What I just heard is not normal. If you are in danger, you need to tell me somehow." Hope flickered. Very slowly, I moved my index finger, the tiniest motion, but Inez noticed at once. "Oh my God," she breathed. "She's pretending to be unconscious." I moved my finger again twice. "Listen," she said, leaning closer. "I'm going to act like I'm checking your monitors. If those two are a danger to you, move your finger 3 times. I did without hesitation. Inez gasped. "They did this to you." I moved my finger 3 more times. She stepped away, fiddled with my IV, thinking furiously. Then she returned. "I'm getting the attending physician and the police. Keep pretending until we can protect you. Do you understand?" I moved my finger once. Those minutes stretched like hours. Inez left. I lay alone, praying she would believe me and act. Footsteps came back at last. Inez. An older doctor who must have been the chief. And, to my astonishment, 2 police officers. "Ma'am," the doctor said softly, "Nurse Alvarez told me what happened. If you can hear me, know that you're safe now. These officers are here to protect you." Relief nearly broke my composure. "Can you open your eyes?" one officer asked. Slowly. Very slowly. I did. The light stabbed at first. Then faces came into focus, concerned. Steady. Real. "Thank God," Inez murmured. "I thought I was losing my mind." "Ma'am," said the officer, a middle-aged man with a grave expression, "I'm Detective Marcus Cole. We believe you may be in serious danger. Can you tell us what truly happened on that mountain?" My voice rasped after hours of feigned unconsciousness. My son and his wife pushed us. The hours that followed were a blur of statements, recordings, and revelations. I told Detective Cole everything: Andrew's death, Lucas's thefts, the pressure to rewrite our will, and finally the plan to kill us on the mountain. Most crucial was the audio on Thomas's phone. "Your husband recorded evidence?" Cole asked. Eyes bright? "Yes," I said. "The confessions, the planning, everything is on his phone." He went straight to Thomas's room. My husband had woken about an hour after me. When Cole explained, Thomas handed over the phone without hesitation. "Everything's there," he said in a weak but steady voice. 2 years of lies. And the truth about today. While technicians analyzed the files, Lucas and Sophie remained in the waiting area, playing devastated family members for anyone who would listen unaware their performance was about to collapse. The recording is clear. Cole announced about an hour later, "We have explicit statements about Andrew's killing, admissions of theft, and direct evidence of premeditated attempted murder against both of you. It's more than enough for arrests." "Will you arrest them?" Here I asked, terrified for our safety. "If they realize we're alive and speaking," Cole nodded. "Officers are already in position. As soon as the warrant is signed, we'll take them in. You're both under police protection. In the meantime," the irony was stark. Downstairs, Lucas and Sophie were likely accepting condolences, discussing funerals and inheritance. They had no idea that upstairs, We were dismantling their carefully engineered world of lies. "There's something else," Cole said, opening a folder. "After hearing your account, we dug into your son's finances. Not only is he bankrupt, as you suspected, he also owes money to very dangerous people off the books, lenders who don't accept excuses." Cold swept through me. "You mean we were not merely inconvenient to him?" I asked. He nodded. The detective explained that we were his only way out. With our inheritance, he could clear his debts and begin again without us. He would likely be dead within a few weeks. That revelation deepened the betrayal. He had not just viewed us as obstacles, he had seen us as his financial lifeline. Our deaths were not simply convenient, they were essential for his survival. "And our grandchildren?" I asked. A fresh wave of pain, rising at the thought of Lucas and Sophie's innocent children. "Social services will take temporary custody," the detective said gently, "but once you recover, you can apply to take them in." The thought of raising the children of our would-be killers was overwhelming. Yet it also seemed the only way for something good to emerge from this nightmare. They were blameless. They deserved a home where love was genuine, not performed. "It's time," the detective announced as an officer entered with paperwork. "The warrants are signed. We're taking them now." From my window overlooking the hospital lot, I watched officers quietly move into position. The moment I had waited for over 25 years had finally come. "Lucas Carter and Sophie Carter," came the firm voice of the lead officer. "You are under arrest for the murder of Andrew Carter and the attempted murder of Evelyn and Thomas Carter." The silence that followed was crushing until Sophie shrieked. "What are you talking about? We're the victims. Our in-laws died in an accident." "Ma'am," the officer replied evenly, "your in-laws are alive, and they have provided complete evidence of your crimes." Another hush. Then Lucas's strangled cry, "That's impossible. We saw them die. They were dead." His involuntary confession was captured on police recorders, adding another brick to the wall of proof. Through the radio, I heard Sophie pivot to blame. "It was all his idea. I did not want any of this. He forced me." And Lucas, frantic, shouted back, "You were the one who suggested the cliff. You planned everything." Within minutes, the alliance of years collapsed as each scrambled to save themselves. Detective Marcus Cole returned about an hour later, satisfaction tempered by sadness. "They're in custody and on the way downtown," he said. "They're already blaming each other, which only strengthens our case." "But there's something else." "What more?" I asked, unsure my heart could handle another blow. "We found this in your son's backpack," he said, holding up a small digital recorder. "Apparently, he's been taping conversations with you and your husband for the last few weeks, likely to confirm whether you were onto him." My blood ran cold. "What does that mean?" "It means he knew you were closing in," the detective said with a weary sigh. "The mountain trip wasn't spontaneous. It was a direct reaction to your suspicions." In one clip, you can clearly hear Sophie say, "We have to act fast before they go to the police." The sheer calculation took my breath away. They had not only plotted to kill us, they had monitored our private words, measuring the danger we posed. We were mice in a maze. They were the experimenters, watching every turn. "There is more," the detective continued. "Our financial review shows your son didn't just owe violent lenders. He also forged your signature on multiple documents in attempts to access your accounts. Had you died on that mountain, he would have immediately controlled all your resources." Each new fact was another knife. My own son had not only planned my death, he had been stealing from me, falsifying my name, and trampling every principle of family trust. I had tried to teach him. "How much in total?" I asked, dreading the answer. "About $50,000 over the last 5 years," he said. Small withdrawals he assumed you would overlook. But together, a significant sum. The money Thomas and I had saved through decades of labor, penny by penny, had financed our son's illusion of comfort while he arranged our murder. The days that followed at St. Augustine Regional Hospital were a blur of police interviews, meetings with attorneys, and calls from reporters. As the story spread, the local press named it the most horrifying family betrayal of the decade. And journalists from across the country wanted our account. My sister Martha Hayes arrived from the next town, weeping and clutching me as if I had returned from the dead. Evelyn, she kept saying, I always sensed something was off about Lucas after Andrew died. But I never imagined this. Her words consoled me. They reminded me my instincts had not been blind. And the children I asked about, my grandchildren, now under temporary care, I saw them yesterday. Martha said sadly. They're confused, asking why their parents can't come home. They're too young to understand. Our lawyer, the same Samuel Whitaker, who had drafted our will, came with updates. The case is strong, he assured us. Between the recordings, the statements during arrest, and the financial trail, it will be very hard for them to avoid serious convictions. Then he added something that chilled me. However, they're seeking a plea to a lesser charge, claiming a crime of passion rather than premeditation. A crime of passion, I cried. They planned for weeks, bought special equipment, chose the perfect location. Whitaker nodded soberly. I know. And we have evidence of planning. Their attorneys will argue they were driven by extreme financial pressure. The thought that they might face reduced sentences enraged me. They had murdered Andrew, tried to murder us, and stolen from us for years, yet now they wanted to pose as victims of circumstance. What can we do to ensure justice, I asked. Testify. Whitaker said simply, your testimony, together with the evidence, will help the jury see these crimes for what they are. But I warn you, it will be emotionally brutal to face your son in court. He was right. The idea of meeting Lucas's eyes, hearing his lawyers defend the indefensible, and reliving every moment of the nightmare in public felt unbearable. But I had to do it for Andrew, for us, and for my grandchildren, who deserve the truth about their parents. 3 weeks after the arrests, Thomas and I finally returned home. Our injuries had healed enough to move about. He still needed crutches, and my arm rested in a sling. The house felt uncanny, like a stage after the actors have vanished. Everything was exactly as we left it on the family outing day, breakfast dishes in the sink, the bed unmade. The flowers Lucas had brought me now, wilted and brown. It was as though time had frozen at the instant our ordinary life ended. Do you think we will ever be happy again? I asked Thomas that first night back, as we lay in our familiar bed. He pulled me close with his uninjured arm and exhaled. I don't know, Evelyn, he said, but we're alive. We have the truth. And for the first time in 25 years, we do not have to live with secrets. The trial began 6 months later. On the day I testified, I looked Lucas in the eyes for the first time since his arrest. I saw no remorse, no grief. I did not see the son I had raised. I saw a cold, calculating stranger who had worn my son's face for decades. When I finished recounting every terrible detail, I addressed him from the stand. Lucas, I don't know who you are, but you are no longer my son. My son died the night you killed Andrew, and what has lived in his place for 25 years is a monster I helped raise without seeing it. The jury deliberated for 3 days before finding Lucas guilty of first-degree murder for Andrew's death and first-degree attempted murder for what he did to us. Sophie received the same verdict as an accomplice. Both were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Now, 1 year later, Thomas and I have begun the process of formally adopting our grandchildren. They are beautiful, Innocent children who deserve to grow up knowing real love. Not the manipulative, poisonous kind they received from their biological parents. Each night, when I tuck them in, I tell them about their Uncle Andrew, the brother they never met. I speak of his kindness, his honesty, and his dream of